Welcome to the Florida Horse Podcast, brought to you by the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association. I'm Tammy Gantt, and I'm joined today by Saffie Joseph Jr. and also Jena Antonucci as these top trainers talk about the impact of decoupling. Thanks.
In this case, for no decoupling, it's been 100 to 0, basically. There is nobody that I've seen in Florida, outside of Florida, within racing, that says that you should decouple. The only people that said you should decouple is Gulfstream trying to convince that.
Yeah, so where do you think we're with the state of things today, after you've seen everything play out on the media and what's going on behind the scenes? Where do you think we are today leading into next Wednesday, which will be a hearing of that bill?
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be clear from our representatives that no horseman is for decoupling. And the state needs to understand how big their breeding industry is, the racing industry, and what it does for the whole state as an economical impact. And I would like to think that Gulfstream, First Racing, been in racing so long, racing's been allowed their land to increase in asset value over time because it sustained a profitable business. They bought the land obviously for $95 million, and now it's worth arguably over $1 billion. So racing was able to sustain that and allow it to grow over time as the area increased in popularity. So at least if you're willing to exit the sport, do it in a dignified way for a sport that's been so good to you. Don't try to bury the sport as you leave. Decoupling, obviously the slots were given to racing as a subsidy. That was they were done to help racing and encourage racing. And then to want to decouple and take what is basically not yours to increase your asset land value, it's not respectful to the game.
You're down there on the ground. You've got people working for you. What's that look like on the ground for the people for their jobs?
Yeah, I mean, it gives everybody in the industry a lack of uneasy feeling. How do people plan? I mean, if you are working here now and you get a job offer somewhere else, you're going to take it because you don't know your uncertainty here. It could be from the meeting that we were told, it could be tomorrow, it could be 1 year, and at best it's 4 years. So even it's either you stand up now and fight, or you have a slow death. And I think we need to stay united in numbers, and hopefully better heads will prevail, cooler heads will prevail, and they will come to some kind of resolution that we don't decouple, and we find a middle ground that keeps both parties happy.
Yes. And so what do you see as far as any sort of unification going on down there as far as horsemen and horsemen's group? Are you starting to see some things gel that could be a positive toward making those connections?
Well, overall, from the whole industry, you can see it, even outside of it, Kentucky, every part of the industry is kind of supportive, that people are starting to talk and realize that this is not in the best interest of racing. There's no way possible anything about this is for the betterment of the horse racing industry, the breed industry, racing in Florida. There's nothing good in this for racing. If there was, they would have had discussions already, and they would have had basically agreements to show what they were going to do. All we were showed is that if decoupling passed, we're allowed 3 more years. So yeah. What good is that for a sport that's been going for so long, and we should be going for the next couple 100 years for the future generations?
I haven't found a horse person anywhere on the planet that thinks decoupling is a good idea. And those of us that have done this for a little while now, I hate to say how long, because it only ages us, but we've all been through a lot of changes from every state, not even just Florida. And we know what decoupling means as far as property asset. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's hard because it's very personal and emotional and close for everybody. It's everyone's livelihoods. And I think the biggest thing that as a trainer and as a breeder, and I'm very blessed to touch so many aspects of this business, from pinhooking to the sales to all of it. The racing is our end product. And when you start talking about decoupling, it backs into everyone beforehand that ever sees these horses race. And that's where I think people get very tight and uncomfortable, and where I think how it was rolled out was done a bit disingenuous to respecting what it actually means to people, to their families, to their livelihoods. It's not something we should just flippantly throw around, that it's just not a big deal, this is where we're going, and deal with it. I am clearly not in favor of decoupling, because I understand what those ramifications are and how it is such a trickle down to our farms in Ocala. and to every breeder and to every groom. And so it is a much bigger conversation that needs to be handled in a much more caring way. Do I understand the fundamentals of property value in business? Yes, I'm a business owner. I get it. Do I understand what all that means to a private entity? I do. But it doesn't mean you just crap on everybody else for self-gain. And so we need to get there to whatever they're trying to get to and what we need to get to in a thoughtful, meaning way that allows our industry to pivot and move forward in Florida. I've heard nobody say we want to be decoupled. I think the concern would be, do we want to be coupled with a bad partner? And do we want to be coupled with somebody who doesn't support what the racing industry means? And so now you put this strategically timed messaging right on top of breeding season. Mm-hmm. Could be questioned or brought up for speculation if it was done this time on purpose to put pressure on the breeders group. Again, that can be unproductive to go down that wormhole. But yeah, I think breeders go, well, heck, if you're telling me we can't race here in 3 years, why would I want a Florida bred here? If I can foal this mare elsewhere to cover my butt, I need to assess that. And I can't blame breeders for looking at that. And so I think the messaging from the racing side needs to be of that. We understand what you've heard. We understand what we put out. Here's what our commitment is, and we are going to be more diligent and meaningful in our messaging.
The Florida Horse Podcast is presented by the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association.